¿Qué tal, muchachos? ¿Cómo están?
Bien.
Bien. Voy a decirlo de nuevo, igual que el último capítulo. Hasta ahora, bien. 19:58.
Bueno, yo les iba a decir hasta un poco nostálgico, weón, porque un bittersweet moment es la última entrevista del año, weón.
De bitter no tiene nada, weón, ya se acabó por suerte. No, estoy pero
acabamos en este lío que nos metimos.
Uno trata de crear un momento y Max ya pinchó la aguja.
No, está bien, es verdad, sí es verdad.
No, pero en verdad sí, o sea, última entrevista del año. Lo vamos a considerar como... próximamente va a ser el final de temporada, porque ahorita, como les habíamos comentado, vienen los 4 episodios que van a ser con nosotros individualmente, teniendo invitados muy cercanos a nosotros, hablando sobre música. No van a ser profesionales, sino van a ser anécdotas, van a ser como recuerdos, pero siempre alrededor de la música. Entonces espero que los disfruten. También, en verdad, muchas gracias por el apoyo que nos han dado hasta el momento. Ha sido invaluable, o sea, no hemos llegado acá, o sea, hemos llegado hasta acá por ustedes y también por los grandes invitados que hemos tenido el placer de hablar. Entonces, gracias a ustedes y gracias a ellos.
Yo iba a decir que gracias a nuestra gran audiencia, que es el motor para nosotros seguir avanzando y seguir creciendo y seguir metiendo ideas y seguir buscando nuevas herramientas para que nos sigan viendo en todos los lados hasta que se aburran de nuestras voces, porque todavía no ven nuestras caras.
Exacto. Pero bueno, entonces ya ahora saltando en materia, el día de hoy tuvimos una última gran entrevista. Tuvimos a la persona que fue VP de Ubiquity Records, editor de la revista On The One Magazine, curador del Bandcamp Weekly y también director de artistas y labels de Bandcamp, Andrew Jervis. Entonces, muchachos, ¿qué les pareció esta entrevista?
A mí me pareció como, o sea, muy interesante porque Bandcamp se resalta en el que está haciendo cosas muy diferentes a lo que vemos en el mainstream y se le está ofreciendo una vía alterna a los artistas para que vendan cassettes, que vendan discos, que vendan diferentes cosas, que no solamente es como un play, y también que empodera un poco a los fans, a los escuchas en apoyar a los artistas, y el hecho de que nos haya explicado un poquito más a fondo la mentalidad y como todos los servicios que uno puede llegar a encontrar como artista, como fan, como label, me parecieron súper chidos.
A mí lo que me gustó fue entender cómo es Bandcamp ya desde el punto de vista de una persona dentro de Bandcamp, cómo ve sus diferentes herramientas. Me encanta la iniciativa de Bandcamp Friday, que hace que apoyen a los artistas y tengan otra fuente de ingreso adicional, que siendo de la misma forma en la que las tienen, solamente que los apoyan más a los artistas, y que en verdad nos haya compartido tanto su visión y su experiencia con nosotros a lo largo del episodio. Ha sido un tremendo invitado y en verdad ha sido una gran entrevista para cerrar esta temporada.
Para mí, me voy a agarrar un poco de lo que dijeron los dos.
Qué raro.
Como se inició.
Como se inició.
No, en verdad. Un tipazo de verdad. Y lo que más me gustó a mí también, en verdad, es tener a alguien de Bandcamp, que siento que es una plataforma que en general está como... no subvalorada, pero es como que es más como que ha tenido menos pantalla, llamémoslo así. Y es una gran herramienta, weón, para artistas. Ha crecido un montón, sobre todo este último año, lo mencionamos en el podcast, ha crecido un 25% el último año, algo así, de 30%. Y nosotros creemos que va a seguir creciendo, de verdad, una herramienta que refleja muy bien lo que está pasando en la industria, para dónde va. Así que nada, me parece genial en ese sentido. Como dice Eric, habla harto de la herramienta para que la escuchen con atención, de la plataforma, que es realmente increíble. Y eso, de verdad, un tipazo y nada, agradecerle de nuevo por venir.
Exacto, entonces me faltó agregar, o sea, gente, si a ustedes les encanta descubrir música, en verdad, muy recomendado este Bandcamp Weekly, es tremendo programa, lo hace sobre diferentes tipos de géneros, sobre diferentes tipos de artistas. Los artistas llegan, hacen entrevistas, cuentan sobre los discos que están vendiendo, que están disponibles en Bandcamp, en verdad, muy bueno. O sea, si son ese tipo de audiencia que son como más metidos en qué está pasando con la música, que está detrás de ese behind the scenes. Entonces, Andrew, thank you for coming.
Me faltó agregar y que creo que da unas últimas palabras extraordinarias en la entrevista para terminar la temporada, que de verdad se lo agradecemos de nuevo. En verdad, un consejo buenísimo para todos los que estamos en esta industria. Así que, ahora sí, Jorge.
Así es. Entonces, Andrew, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your words. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Y gente, en verdad, disfruten esta entrevista. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me here, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Well, as I already told you, like this is our last interview of the season, and we're very excited to have you. We wanted to know, like, what's your music background that shaped your music taste of today, And how does your creation process work besides just listening to the music? What else do you look for?
Wow. Okay. So 2 parts. Oh, wow. Well, I grew up in Nottingham in the middle of England, which is a pretty small town, but has a couple of different universities there. So there were always a lot of students there, which meant that there were a lot of things happening for, people in their teens, lots of cool clubs, lots of great record stores. And it was really varied. And my favorite club that I remember going to when I was maybe too young to get in there, but managed to squeeze in with a fake ID and a little bit of a fake mustache, was this place called The Garage. And The Garage was this amazing, you probably wouldn't allow it now for health and safety reasons, but it was like a warren of different rooms. It was cavernous, and upstairs was this room where there was the music policy was like soul and funk and hip hop and early Chicago house. And then downstairs in the basement, it was where all the punk and the indie kids kind of hung out. And then in between, there was a courtyard where everyone kind of mixed. So to me, it was always natural that you can like the Smiths and the Damned and stuff like that, but you can also funk and soul and jazz and hip hop. So my head was always pretty open to everything and anything. But my personal love began with jazz, soul, that kind of stuff, and then drifted more into electronic. And so that's just kind of where my interests lie. I ended up working for when I moved to San Francisco in the early 90s, I worked at a record store. The record store was well known for selling soul and funk music. And we ended up starting a record label, actually 3 record labels. One was a Latin jazz and Afro-Cuban label. One was a reissue label for hard to find soul and funk. And one was kind of a label for putting out new music based on all these old influences. So again, I got one foot in the past, one foot in the future. Pretty eclectic taste. And then to the second part of your question, I get a lot of music fired at me all day long from PR companies and people like that. But I like to dig. I don't like to leave any stone unturned. And, I peruse the website all the time. I use the Bandcamp app. I'm following about 6,000 artists and labels and fans on Bandcamp. So through the music feed, I'm constantly told about what people are buying and where they're discovering it and all that kind of stuff. And then I just like to, dig around. My ears are always open. And if I see someone mention something, I'm like, that looks interesting. Don't know that record. I'll note it down and I'll check it out that week. So there's always something for me to listen to. There's never a shortage of music,
It's great. It's still about being open-minded and be willing to listen to new proposals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But also in a curatorial role, I think it's really important because it'd be really easy just to rely on what people who are paid to tell you is good, or even what your friends tell you is good, because everyone has their own ways of accessing music. I feel like as someone with a curatorial role, it's really important for me to not leave out, musicians and artists who may not have the means to get their music out there via a PR company, or may not have a big label behind them or something like that. So, whether they're from, somewhere halfway across the world, or whether they're from somewhere, where they're financially challenged in comparison to other artists and labels, or whether from a really tiny scene and they're only just kind of getting them. It's really important to dig and to look around and leave a little bit of your mind open to the idea that you can't know everything, and even everyone who's telling you everything isn't going to complete that picture for you. There's always going to be some unknown, and that's often where the good, juicy stuff is. The things that I love turning people on to something that that you may be the first, or not many people know about, and I'll play a track in the show this week, and I know nobody knows who this band is. I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to share it with people. That's how you find those things. You don't get those things because someone's paid to tell you about it, because then they're telling lots of people that. So
definitely, I know that you to start mentioning and talking more into detail about Bandcamp and all these professional aspects in the music industry. I think that Bandcamp is a living proof of that there are more fans that are willing to spend more money to support artists in a different way than just streaming, for example, And my question is like, how can artists, after building a super fan community, can retain and keep engaging with their audience afterwards?
Oh yeah, there's lots of ways, and it is really important. So I'm going to talk to on Bandcamp specifically, though, if that's okay. The great thing about Bandcamp is that if you are an artist and you are building a fan base on Bandcamp, those fans will travel with you no matter what happens to you in your career. So let's say you start on Bandcamp, you put out your own record, and people like it, and you get noticed, and a label wants to sign you. If that label signs you, you got to make sure that they're on Bandcamp, because what happens is they're not just signing you, they're also signing all the fans that come with you. Because when that label adds music to your account, Bandcamp's going to notify all the fans who opened their wallets before and supported that artist, which to me is a big selling point. If you've got 500, 200, 1,000, whatever it is, fans who bought your music before, and a label comes on like, hey, we want to sign you, we want to put out your next album, I think you should be saying, hey, great, I've got 1,000 people who bought my last record. I want to make sure it goes out on Bandcamp because those people, they actually bought my record. I might have more people following me on a social media site or whatever, but that's just frictionless. That's just like a like or whatever. It doesn't really add up too much. The system doesn't pay the rent. But on Bandcamp, these are fans who bought my vinyl or my cassette or tour t-shirt or whatever it is. They spent money on me and they're likely to do it again. And, so let's say you sign to that label and then you end up signing to a bigger label. And then by the end of that record, you hate labels and you want to do your own thing again. All those fans are still traveling with you. Your fan database just keeps growing and it's always yours. And every time you put out a new record, all of those fans will be notified. And the beauty about it is that the community on Bandcamp actually drives a third of the sales. So let's say I bought your record. That's not the end of the story. If I buy your record from a traditional website or whatever, that is generally it. You know about it and I know about it. But on Bandcamp, if I buy your record, I have 6,000 or so fans following me. And all of those 6,000 fans will be notified that I bought your record. So it's never just about the fans that you have. It's always about the fans that you could reach because of this kind of viral effect on the site. So I think it's a great selling point. I think it's something for people to remember. In between releasing records, you can use Bandcamp's community tab or the artist app to message your fans. I often think it's a shame when you just see from artists only using like a Facebook or something like that, where they have fans, but you're not going to reach them all. I know if I send a message out on Facebook, it only reaches, X%, and then I have to pay more if I want to like reach people. You can use the community tab or the artist app to message your fans. And it doesn't cost you anything. And every fan will get an email and they'll get a notification in their app. So stay in touch with your fans that way. Make sure they know what you're up to. Even if it's like, hey, I'm going back in the studio, or I had this idea for a song, or I'm not feeling great today. Fans want to hear from you. That's what they sign up on Bandcamp for. It's not like, you can't spam them every day, hey, I'm going to cut my toenails or whatever. But, they want to hear from you. That's what they're using Bandcamp for. And then also Bandcamp Live is another great way to stay in touch with fans. Whether you're doing a full-blown live stream show or whether you're doing an album release party or premiering a video or something like that. You can do free shows or you can do ticketed shows, but it's a great way to connect with your fans around the world. In a way that you couldn't before, but it's through Bandcamp. So, you can have a little merch table, you can chat with your fans, you can engage with them. Again, it could be like just a chat. It could be a demonstration of how you use a piece of music software, or it could be to unveil all the tracks from your album, whatever it is,
Absolutely. And linking everything you have just said, the first message that you read when you enter the Bandcamp site says that fans have paid artists $840 million, and like 200 more or less have been just in the last year. So for a company that was founded in 2008, that's awesome news to our eyes. And it also reflects like a big trend that's like more behind Bandcamp, and it's like happening in the music industry, all this community one-to-one relationship, and Bandcamp has been clearly a pioneer in seeing this. So, but it's definitely not only about the general trends that the industry is going right now. So we wanted to ask you, like, which things or which strategies have been the most effective in this last year that have driven Bandcamp to these amazing results? And like stealing your own words from an interview you did with Music Ally, what trends between Bandcamp and the music industry in general match or differ?
Okay. Well, it has become much more easy to tell your fans who are not yet following you on Bandcamp to follow you on Bandcamp. And I think that's because of the success of like Bandcamp Fridays and other things that have made Bandcamp more of a household name. So more people know about Bandcamp than ever before, right? So instead of telling your fans, hey, you can follow me on this site that you've never heard of, now you can tell your fans on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, hey, it's great we hang out here, but follow me on Bandcamp. If you really love me and you want to support me, follow me over here. And it's not that difficult to bring those fans over. I don't know if I gave this example in that interview that you referenced, but there's an artist called Lizzie McAlpine who had maybe like 20,000 fans on Instagram. I think it was Instagram. And she didn't have a Bandcamp account. And she emailed us and she was like, I'd like to do one of these vinyl campaigns that you do on Bandcamp. I want to press some vinyl for my album. And we were like, you know what? You don't have an account. So you don't have anyone following you. So I think that's going to be really difficult. But she said, well, I have a lot of fans on Instagram and they really love me. I was like, well, if you can convince them. And of course she did. She told them, support me on Bandcamp, and her album funded really, really quickly. And that's it's just a nice example of how you can take fans now from places where previously they may not have, but this past couple of years, those fans will have warmed to the idea of moving to Bandcamp. Also, doing Bandcamp live shows is a great way to get your fans in on Bandcamp. 40% of the people who are watching Bandcamp live events have never used Bandcamp before, but wind up actually becoming fans and buying something from you on Bandcamp. I think something like 70% of the people who buy something on any given day on Bandcamp are repeat fans. So we have a really nice retention rate. Once you got people over, it's easy to keep them buying. So there's a couple of things. I think the general goodwill around the site is kind of unusual. I think a lot of artists and labels, probably rightfully so, are pretty skeptical about the music business, right? And I'm not saying that we're perfect, but we try. And I think because we have the philosophy of putting musicians and their art first, that's what informs every decision. Every new thing that we build is all built around that idea. And I think that's another one of the ways in which we differ. Obviously, other ways in which we differ, you get paid within 24 hours.
Yeah.
You get the lion's share of it. Our take is tiny. Our take is 10 to 15%. There are lots of ways in which we differ, whether they're fundamental or, little nitty gritty.
And I think it also adds the fact that the Bandcamp, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the Bandcamp audience is very lean in, that is there to engage all the time with the music, with the artist, with the story that is behind it. Okay, what's the credits? What are the musicians? Who is playing there? Where are they? And what are the influences for this album? So I think it really resonates with that, because that's just an article that I just read with media. But jumping back to the Bandcamp Friday, it's been almost a year that you guys keep doing this initiative, which I think is a beautiful initiative to help out labels, to help out artists. But I wanted to know, what are the key takeaways that Bandcamp team has learned from these Bandcamp Fridays that you guys were able to reiterate in the future references with the learnings that you had? And what are the learnings that you have spotted that artists and labels should know for future references?
A couple of big things we learned is that a lot of artists and labels are, a lot of artists and labels lean on Bandcamp to pay the bills. We are flooded with emails all the time with oh my God, thank you for doing Bandcamp Fridays to help me pay the rent, help me pay the mortgage, help me put some food on the table. And that's crazy, it's obviously makes us want to keep doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Also, the amount of people who actually took this idea that we just thought, let's just put a little bit extra money in people's pockets and then turn that into something where they would in turn put money in people's pockets was really heartwarming. A lot of people use Bandcamp now for charity and awareness raising causes, whether it's for like voters' rights and things like that, food banks. People took this opportunity that we gave them to put more money in their pocket and instead turned it around and like, you know what, there's a food bank in my community that needs some help. I'm actually going to do an event on a Bandcamp Friday, put out an unheard album or an unheard track or something like that. And I'm going to donate all the extra money I make on Bandcamp Friday to the food bank. So knowing that people really want to use Bandcamp for charity events is kind of an interesting thing. And hopefully we've made a few little background changes there that kind of make that easier. It's certainly, the first couple of Bandcamp Fridays was so big that we had no idea, that on average a Friday is about $500,000 pre-pandemic worth of business on the site. The first two Bandcamp Fridays were over $11 million.
Wow.
You add them together. One was 4 points, the next one was 7 points, something crazy. So we had to do a lot of work to make sure the site stayed stable. I have to joke that, when the pandemic first kicked in and people panic bought and they went to their supermarkets and they emptied and the shelves were all empty. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what Bandcamp looked like after that first Bandcamp Friday. Like, oh my God, So we had to do a lot of stuff in the background to make sure we could handle that. And that's been great because that means now anytime anyone puts out a huge, massive record, or if there's a number of those things, or we do more Bandcamp, the site is super rock solid. So that's great. Other bits of advice, if ever we do, whenever we do those now, I actually advise people to make those records, whatever record is that you're hoping will do great on Bandcamp Friday, make it available in a few days before. Because in actual fact, once it's up and kind of running and it's in the community already, it's in Discover, it's in a few fans collections, that'll help you really take off on Bandcamp Friday. Whereas on Bandcamp Friday alone, there's a lot of noise and you're competing with everyone else. So that's another tip. I'm not sure. Was there anything else specifically you wanted to know about? I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, I wanted to know anything that you guys have learned that any artist or label should know about when these Bandcamp Fridays come along.
Yeah, starting early, I think is probably not a bad idea. Okay. For this week, there's a legendary label called Sun, which is the label that like Johnny Cash and Roy Orbison and people like that are on, and they're bringing their catalog to Bandcamp. And they were like, well, let's do a Bandcamp Friday. And I was like, do it a couple of days before.
Okay.
Have it kind of circulate on the site for a few days first and have fans talking about it. And then you've got a little stepping stone for when Bandcamp Friday hits.
And what's like the livelihood for Bandcamp Friday for 2022?
Yeah, I don't know. We're actually, I think it's an ongoing discussion. I know we'll do something. I just don't know if it'll be exactly the same. For the most part, I know that people would find them useful. There are some folks that worry like, oh, is Bandcamp okay? We've done all these Bandcamp Fridays. It's a lot of money. It's been close to $70 million after this Friday, right? None of it went to Bandcamp. Thankfully, fans have spent about 190 or so million dollars on other days. So that's great in this last 12 months. So we always say, any day is a good day to buy on Bandcamp. The majority of your money goes to the artist. And, you're always going to find great new music. So that's not a concern. There were some people who thought that just because it's every first Monday, maybe it's becoming too much. But there are equally probably more people that, no, please keep doing them. So I don't know, we got a lot of way up and a lot of decisions to make. Hopefully soon. Watch this space.
Well, let's hope that this initiative lasts for a very long time and brings a lot of help to a lot of artists, because that's what this initiative is all about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And well, to talk about the different tools that Bandcamp has to offer, which one have you found that is the most underrated and you believe is a great opportunity to artists or bands to use and they're not really noticing or using it as an alternative?
Well, one we haven't touched on yet is this idea of, is this feature just called recommended albums. At the bottom of every artist profile page, there's a thing that says recommended albums. And you as an artist can recommend 3 other albums from other artists. And so if you're collaborating with someone, if you're friends with another band, or if your band members are in different bands, if you're about to go out on tour with another band, if you're on a label and you're just starting out, but that label has some bands who have some recognition, maybe have those bands recommend you, have people in your community recommend each other. And then what happens is those 3 recommendations that you pick, they appear at the bottom of your album page. And in a kind of like, you like this band and they recommended these, and you can leave a quote about why you like these specific albums. Also, when an artist buys an album from the band who's doing the recommending, when the fan checks out, there's a little thing that pops up. It's like, hey, this band recommended these too. So maybe you'll end up buying those records. Also, from the homepage, you can search for all kinds of things, right? You can search for, the indie music on cassette from Brooklyn or whatever, But one way that you can search is via artist recommended albums, which I think is really interesting. If you're a big fan of an artist and they're saying, I love this band, then that's kind of powerful to me. Knowing that fans drive a third of the sales on the site, other fans turning to fans who say, hey, you got to buy this. This is great. What if your favorite artist says, this is awesome? That's even more powerful, right? So I think that's something that everybody should do, especially if you're trying to get your foot in the door and you're part of a kind of a burgeoning community. Everyone should be recommending each other, because then when that one fan stumbles across one of the bands in that community, they're more likely to go, oh, wait, they're connected to this band, who are connected to this band. Everybody wants to put that kind of puzzle together, right? And a lot of the fans on Bandcamp want to be completists. They want to have everything. And if they're interested in the scene, they're going to buy band A and band B and band C if you show them how all those bands kind of connect together.
Agreed. And for instance, and talking about community, what can you tell artists about transitioning from a streaming mentality to capitalizing on their niche audience? Not saying that streaming is bad, but maybe it's not the main source of revenue for, I don't know, like emerging or mid-tier artists. So they should be like focusing more on strengthening that relationship with their core and niche audience, right?
Yeah, sometimes I think people look at the numbers and they go, oh, wow, I've been streamed this many times on YouTube or whatever. But on Bandcamp, I only have 300 fans. And they're like, I don't, But those 300 fans, if they all open their wallets and they buy the album at the price you want, or they pay more, that's going to bring you in, a lot more money. And those fewer fans are a lot more meaningful and much easier to reach and much easier to kind of help grow. I'm not saying don't do YouTube. Why not have your music on the streaming sites? That's totally fine. I know some people do things like they'll make an album available on Bandcamp and they'll have the singles from that album streaming on the streaming sites. But the album is, Bandcamp's the place where you go to get the album. That's fine if you want to try that as a strategy. I'm always a fan of having everything everywhere, just because there are fans who are only going to buy your music because that's what their favorite platform is or whatever. But just make sure it's on Bandcamp in full. Fans love albums on Bandcamp. They buy albums 5-1 over singles. Obviously, the rest of the world is set up to sell singles for playlists and things like that. Bandcamp, it's all about the album. So if you're thinking about an album campaign, for instance, make an album available for pre-order and release the singles from it so that a fan comes along and they're going to buy the album rather than just buy a standalone single.
And I personally find super hilarious that in a world of fast consumption, streaming, algorithms, you are basically the ones facilitating the old ways so that artists can sell cassettes, sell vinyls, not using algorithms or not as much, recommending music in the natural way that you were saying, I just bought this record, therefore my fans and my followers are going to notice that. and then it's gonna all like build up together. And like basically you're like the complete opposite of what is happening in the mainstream per se music industry. And my question would be like, what has been the biggest challenge or obstacle for you to hold and keep this decision on betting your efforts on an artist-centric model?
Good question. Well, I think that, everybody's always wowed by the shiny new things, right? Like this year, everyone's talking about NFTs, right? And, look how much money this one artist made from NFTs. And, sometimes those shiny new objects seem very appealing. And everyone will be asked, well, when's Bandcamp doing NFTs? When's Bandcamp going to accept crypto? And, in the end, it's much easier to think about which features can we improve or work on or create that would be better for every artist as opposed to just one or two. And that's generally kind of what drives what we end up working on. Bandcamp Live is a pretty good example of something where we did kind of see things happening, and we knew that we had to kind of jump in the pandemic had happened. We kicked off Bandcamp Fridays. It was clear that artists weren't making the money that they were used to making. They weren't able to tour. And all of a sudden there were like a bazillion streaming sites, right? And some of them are huge, like the Twitches and stuff, and some of them are small and coming from nowhere. But not many of them were music centric. A lot of them are like video gaming related or, kind of coming into the music space. We just thought it was obvious, like, okay, we have to be able to allow people to stream a live event from their Bandcamp page where their fans know who they are, where they don't have to like sign in, sign up, learn up for some new system to be able to follow their favorite band. They can just use Bandcamp. And the band doesn't have to learn some whole new, platform either to make these things happen. So Bandcamp Live was one where we kind of like, okay, you know what? This is something we should be doing too. We weren't first. We had to kind of catch up. So yeah, sometimes, it's obvious, and sometimes you have to kind of learn and adapt a little bit.
That's such a great reflective story, and for sure, a lot of us have been in that situation when sometimes just adapting allows us to be better in our competition. But talking about Bandcamp being an artist-centric model that really focuses on bringing the best experience to their artists and try to monetize their fans, how do you guys measure success? How does the company put their different key performance indicators and measure that and make it a number?
I mean, that's actually pretty easy. If artists and labels are doing well, then we're doing well. We have to build. Our cut is so tiny that if people aren't doing well, then we're not going to be making enough to get by. So we don't have like we don't have investors who are like, Bandcamp sales need to grow 30% this year or whatever. That's just not. Bandcamp's been profitable since 2012. So we're kind of lucky in that way. We haven't had to take money from anyone in order to grow. It's just grown slowly. And that's always been part of our thing, is be methodical and grow slowly, and do things the right way as opposed to rush, get money, burn through it just to show that we burned through it and then try and get some more money. It's kind of not how we've done it. So as long as artists and labels are doing well, we do well. And since we've been profitable since 2012, I think that's it's fair to assume that things are headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. And especially Bandcamp being like artist-centric business. We are now seeing actually in the industry like more of the actors, let's call them, switching to that side. There's a huge discussion in the industry about which model should we have in payment system and etc. But slowly we are seeing some switches like Tidal, SoundCloud are moving. So I wanted to ask you, let's suppose that Spotify also adapts this move. Like the huge ones also start being artist-centric and everything. I would like to ask you, hypothetically, like, how do you think this would change the payment systems of like streaming services and whatever? Do you think we would still have this 30-second rule or whatever? I'm asking you because like we were discussing this recently in the podcast, and I think you could give a really good opinion on this, like really valuable.
And especially now that, for instance, Netflix just announced that they are going to start tracking their shows by time instead of streams because of all the Squid Game like phenomenon that happened. But a lot of those viewers were just watching that for 2 minutes and stopped the stream. So they are not passing just to time.
Right. Whew. Well, I can't really speak to what Spotify and Tidal and Apple Music and what they will do. I don't know. For us, I think we have enough that makes us different that I wouldn't be concerned if people started doing that. And I think that one of the big ways in which Bandcamp is different enough where it's not a concern is the community that's there.
For sure.
Occasionally there'll be a company that comes along and people will be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna use this instead. And have you guys seen this? This is much better than Bandcamp. I'm like, I don't know, maybe shiny penny again, but also doesn't have the community. One thing that we've built being in business over 10 years is this music centric community where, obviously you've got artists and labels making amazing music, but they're buoyed by fans who want to buy music. And there's tons of them using the site. You can't just do that.
No,
you can't just like, oh, we got a new policy. Come on over, everyone.
No,
like,
for sure.
It doesn't really work like that. Yeah, I think this next year or so for us will be interesting too, because we also will be making some changes, and there's some exciting stuff in the way that Bandcamp works and how fans listen to music on Bandcamp. They'll be kind of fun to watch and see. But the core is always going to be artists first. Music is art. Let's make that the driving force, rather than how many people can we get to use the service? You know what I mean? Like, that's just not as interesting to us.
For sure. Like, we actually talked it before when we were preparing the episode. Like, we think Bandcamp doesn't even compete with Spotify. Like, they're like almost different audiences, like different.
Correct. Yeah.
Even if Spotify changes their payment system, they're not gonna ever compete to Bandcamp because of what you just said. The question was saying just to like see or fantasize, how do you think payment would change, especially in this context that nowadays it's like 30 seconds, count as a stream, pay, and otherwise we don't. It's like...
Yeah. Well, it's trippy, right? In a way, what the streaming services have kind of fixed in America, I don't know about elsewhere, but in America, is radio. Like, it's a kind of a suitable replacement for radio. Radio used to be great here. There's still interesting pockets of radio, but it's not as interesting in the States as it is in England, where I grew up. In England, you got BBC, you got local radio, you got all kinds of interesting things. In America, we had like college radio, and we had some local radio that was pretty interesting. And there still is a bit of that. But most radio has been bought up by a couple of corporations.
Yeah.
And it's just it's the same garbage. It's like an algorithm playing the same garbage that I would never want to tune into for the most part, right? So you've got podcasts and you've got, curated streams and things like that. And if that's your thing, if you run a boutique and you need to have music on in the background and that's like something that's like, okay, this model to me is good for that. That's kind of where it works. I don't see it. It obviously has not proven itself as a model for most artists as a way to get their music out there and sustain that artist's career. It just hasn't proven itself for the majority of artists out there. Obviously, there are some very well-known, highly paid artists at the top of the scale who are making bank, but there's a lot of people below that who are not making anything. And so there would have to be radically different payment systems in place, which I don't, none of them have embraced so far. Whether they will or not, I don't know. Like I said, I can't really speak for them. But it'd have to be pretty different to the way things are, right?
Absolutely.
So, Andrew, this is just out of curiosity. I have two more questions on my side. What are the top genres in Latin America on Bandcamp?
You know what? Bandcamp, this is the one way in which we're somewhat similar to everyone else, in that the genres that are popular tend to be kind of the same as everywhere else. So you've got alternative, you've got electronic, you've got metal is surprisingly popular, across the board everywhere. But kind of gets roped into alternative a little bit, hip hop, etc. I think that in general, the genres line up pretty close to like what are the most popular genres in the world, wherever. Obviously, in Latin America, there are lots of types of music that are generated and coming from there. And, whether you're talking about the popularity of cumbia, or whether it's like pockets of really interesting music coming out of Brazil that you can only really hear in Brazil, or whether there's interesting Latin jazz happening, or whether it's, the kind of indie DIY scene from Mexico City. A lot of that stuff is there. But in general, for some reason, the kind of the top selling genres tend to be the top selling genres. If you just look at any, how do you carve it up and what does it look like worldwide?
All right.
It doesn't mean that, but it doesn't mean though that, that's not to put anybody off. If you're making music and you have your own scene and it's not alternative or it's not hip hop or whatever, do it. We love music if you look at the Bandcamp Daily and the kind of music that they cover, it's pretty eclectic, right? Like we make it a point to uncover as much as we possibly can. And we've built a crowd and an audience that want to read about that stuff. So don't be put off by that. It's just how things sell. It doesn't mean that communities can't survive and blossom on Bandcamp if they don't fit the kind of obvious genres. There's all kinds of music getting a lot of love on Bandcamp from all corners of the world in all different kind of shapes and sizes and colors.
And I was like thinking more into the future. For example, like what is the next big challenge for Bandcamp after like the pandemic is over, like in a couple of years? Like what is the next big challenge for Bandcamp to grow and to continue helping and looking for the wheel of supporting artists?
Well, I think we're definitely going to continue to invest a lot in Bandcamp Live. One thing that we saw was, again, artists using a feature that we built, but maybe in ways that we hadn't thought about. So initially, obviously, like I said, it was for people to do shows, right? And then people start doing tutorials, and someone actually rescored the movie, a movie soundtrack, and aired the movie with their new soundtrack. And people are doing album release parties and video release. So I think we should, one of the things we'll be doing is looking at ways to make it ridiculously easy for you as an artist to connect and hang out with your fans. Like it should be even more just like a Zoom call, right? Like what for your Bandcamp page, you just hit a button and any one of your fans who happens to get the message that you're online right now wants to come and hang out and you want to chat. Like that kind of stuff. Why not? Let's make it even easier for everybody across the board to do things like that. So building that fan artist connection up even more. What else post pandemic? We have one store in Oakland, California, just close to me right here. It's a record store and it's a performance space. I have a little studio to record the Bandcamp Weekly, and we have our offices there. I'd love to see us open a bunch of those stores. I don't, that's going to require some money, but at some point, we should have those. That'd be great all over the place, supporting local community, having bands come through, play, stream to their fans around the world, selling records from all over the place. It's kind of a hangout and come and see what's selling. In the store in Oakland, we have the big giant screen that shows you what fans are buying around the world, just like on the homepage, the tickets on the homepage. Yeah. So it's kind of fun to be in a record store and buying music and seeing what someone in Spain is buying or what someone in Tokyo is buying, right? So that would be fun to do. I definitely want to get back on the road and start doing. We used to do these things called Bandcamp socials, where we would go to a town and invite all the local artists and labels and hang out with them and go over tips and things like that. I want to be doing more of those again and more further afield. We started doing a lot of them, and then obviously pandemic came. We're like, oh, that's that.
I'll go put one in Spain, in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Peru, and we'll be there.
All right. All right.
Absolutely.
I'll see you guys then.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Andrew, like really, and thank you for coming. And I just have like one more closing question, and it's like, sure. You have done more than 400 Bandcamp weekly shows, which I'm a big fan, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
And you have had the chance to talk to different labels, splendid artists, amazing musicians. What have you learned from talking to these people that young professionals and emerging artists that are struggling while navigating this industry should know?
Well, a couple of things. One, everybody was in your shoes at some point. You know what I mean? Like anyone that really matters was in your shoes at some point, trying to figure out it's okay to be there. You know, like everybody has to spend that time, and it helps build you. And, you know, a lot of people who are in the music business and seen as successful now are still making stuff up as they go along. It's not like you can go to school, right? There are courses you can take in the music business or whatever, and maybe those are useful. But honestly, real world experience, getting your foot in the door at a label, if that's, you know, maybe we'll get an internship at a label, see how it works. Maybe go work at I interned
at a record store.
At the record store. I interned at a radio station. I worked at a TV station. All these things to figure out like what I liked and what I didn't like. It's all really useful, and it all helps you kind of learn and build your career. And, you know, relying on your community, helping build a community is really important. So helping put on events, helping the other bands around you and having them help you, I think is really important. And, you know, being careful about who you surround yourself with. Sometimes having a manager and a label and a publisher and a booking agent and all that stuff is really useful. But just knowing like when you need that stuff, like taking your time and not jumping in too early and learning this stuff yourself is really, really useful. Because some point you may get dropped and you're left and then you don't know anything about this business that you're in and relying on to promote your music. And it's really good to know as much as you can. And I think real world experience is really important. So, you know, if you're feeling like, I got a mountain to climb, hey, that's part of it. You know, it's fun to climb that mountain, and it's good to pick up stuff for yourself as you go. It's really important to know as much as you can about this business that you're in. I think that's probably good for most artists.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you. I don't know if you have any final message or if people want to contact you, shoot you a text. The channel is yours.
I'm just Andrew at bandcamp.com. Andrew at bandcamp.com. If, you know, you got questions about how to use Bandcamp, you want to sign up or whatever, I can help you, or I can point you to colleagues to help you. If you got a question I can't answer, if you want to try out one of these things we've been talking about, Bandcamp Live or Bandcamp Vinyl or whatever, email me. I'm easy to find.
Andrew, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. From our side, 8,000 kilometers, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for all the good questions. I appreciate it.
I think we couldn't have asked for better words to end the episode and the season. So thank you very much, Andrew. Seriously.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you again. You know where to find me if you need anything from Bandcamp, all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Same for you.
Hey, muchas gracias por escucharnos y no olvides de seguirnos en Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora o la plataforma digital que sea de tu preferencia. Si te gustó el podcast, no olvides recomendarnos a tu grupo de amigos o colegas, ya que esa es la mejor manera de que sigamos creciendo la comunidad. También nos puedes encontrar en Instagram, Facebook y YouTube como 8,000 kilómetros podcast. Cualquier comentario, duda o sugerencia es más que bienvenida y nos vemos en el siguiente episodio.